Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. And a very good evening to you all. Welcome everybody to the first ever thinkTALK South Africa. thinkTALK is a community dialogue session that gives the community the space to discuss important ideas and issues that affect our lives, culture, and society in a constructive and amicable manner. thinkTALK emphasizes the importance or the powers of ideas, the importance of community, and the imperative of networks in creating change. thinkTALK is one of the programs under the Young Leaders Network at the World Islamic Economic Forum Foundation, or WIEF. At WIEF, we promote dialogue and foster cooperation between Muslim and non-Muslim businessmen in the belief that collaboration is the salient feature of the 21st century international relations. And businesswomen as well. That's right. We have two initiatives at the World Islamic Economic Forum. One of them is the Young Leaders Network, chaired by Ibrahim Patel and led by Fazil Irwan, and the other is the Businesswomen. So our main event at the WIF is the annual World Islamic Economic Forum, whereby we bring together government leaders, regional experts, academic scholars, captains of industries, and corporate managers to discuss the many opportunities of business, social, and academic collaboration and partnerships. Aside from the forum, we give highest regards to what we believe is the most important segment of society, and it's the youth. Hence, this program that we're organizing, thinkTALK, and the young fellows that we're having at Postman's. The Young Leaders Network, as I said earlier, is chaired by Ibrahim Patel, our role model. Chaired by Ibrahim Patel and led by Fazil Irwan. So, the Young Leaders Network is a global platform. The Young Leaders Network is a global platform that brings together young leaders, social entrepreneurs, and change makers from all across the globe, to connect creative ideas and explore prospects of collaboration in business and social programs. And we're very lucky to have here with us in this room, small room, about 50 people from over 16 countries. Wow. 18 countries. This is really a beautiful gathering. Back in Kuala Lumpur, we have had so far 4 successful thinkTALK programs. And when we decided to take it outside of Malaysia, we could not have thought of a better place than the beautiful city of Durban, South Africa. Yeah. Each thinkTALK features a unique topic and speaker, an artist, and at the end of the session, it's a combination of drinks and refreshments we call them in Malaysia, basically snacks. And as it is a common practice back in Malaysia that we start with a performance by an artist, we'd like to start today's thinkTALK with a performance by Eric Hadibi, or Cool Fire. Please give a round of applause. you very much, co-founder. Now he's gonna give us a poem. You're gonna share a poem with us. Okay, great.
He's gonna recite.
Yeah, the poem is a contribution from some of the youths that we work with and some of the writers that we work with. And it's entitled Elders of Revolution. They lived by the amount of hope they heard, life being the only time they heard, measured by the rise and fall of the sun. Upon the sky, they called upon the light to lead their odyssey. Perhaps you saw them at the intersection chasing their dreams, hoping a day will come and bestow them reality. Their smiles, a shield of their sadness. They preferred laughter to tears, so not to be ashamed. To lift their spirit, they chanted songs and lived each day by how it comes. They prayed hard to a worth God. In Him they found solace. They sold all they know to feed the young generation, passed into Halum to secure their legacy. Tales of coming, not embellished of fallacy. They abhorred mediocrity. Instead, they preserved their identity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, good one. The beautiful performance and the beautiful poem. As unique as our beautiful gathering, we have a we're very actually honored to have a very prominent speaker with us today. He's not any speaker. He's an iconic figure, and he's an iconic figure. He was previous or former Deputy Prime Minister of Malaysia and the current chairman for the World Islamic Economic Forum Foundation. He might be older than us in age, but he's certainly younger than all of us at heart. Please help me welcome Tun Musa Hitam.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Nervous enough for the first time. Voice refusing to do it. Assalamu alaikum. I think it's going to be fun for you guys for the next few days, starting from 1 or 2 days ago. I say that because I can see from your body language, your cheerfulness, your enthusiasm, and indeed I think this is what we are after, we meaning the WIEF. In the sense that there's no better way than to get the young together, and there's no better way of trying to get out of the young than to get them together and interact and provoke each other into innovativeness in preparation not only for their future life, but in preparation of an improvement of their own livelihood, which in turn would result in the overall good for humanity, if you like, widening it so far. Today, tonight, rather, this event was originally called thinkTALK. Fadil briefed me about it, and by the time we start here, now this thing called thinkTALK has been changed into a special talk. Maybe he does worry that I might be able to think, but coming all the way from Malaysia at my age, I may not be able to talk. But the ability to talk is not a problem for somebody who has been in politics for so long. The problem is how to stop that person. I've been in politics for a long time. And nobody believes that when I say that I'm no more in politics. But believe you me, there's a difference between in politics indeed as out of politics. If you're out of politics, does not mean that you are not in touch, that you're not interested in politics. Because politics in the modern world is an essential ingredient to the success of any nation. It could either become negative or positive depending on how you manage that. Tonight, the organizers are very optimistic about me because they have allocated me 20 minutes to talk. Tonight, there has not been a definition of what I'm to talk about. It was only just now at the hotel that I was asking them, what am I expected to talk about? I don't quite really know. But the only conclusion that the two of us had was simple. Me, and me. Why? Because the easiest for a politician who has been used to such a huge ego in life is to talk about himself. But I would like to try this by talking about myself with all humility, in the sense that during the course of my life, my adult life, I have undergone through so much experience, positive and negative, in all aspects, that have a lot to do with preparations for your future and the role that you can play, you need to play, you could play, you have played, overall, to have meaning to your life. Let me say that since I was young, I've always wanted to be a leader. So, when I was still in secondary school or high school, I became president of the local called Young Malayans Club at that time, before Malaysia was established. As a result of holding that post, I went up further to become the vice chairman of the Malayan Youth Council, which gave me the first opportunity to be in contact with the world, in the sense that through that position that I have, I attended the World Assembly of Youth, first time ever held in Asia, which was in Singapore. And what an experience it was for me. A teenager, going to Singapore at an international conference. I was amazed, I was dazed, I was excited about the variety of nationalities that were represented and the debates that were taking place. But nevertheless, I was merely an observer, not somebody who was very active at that time. Then I entered university, became very active in the students' union. Because of that, during my first year, I was selected by my school teacher to go to Hong Kong to build a playground for handicapped children on an island called Lantau Island. Exciting enough, or boring enough. But the interesting thing was that I went to Hong Kong 6 days and 6 nights on a cargo boat, on deck. Being a good Muslim at that time, innocent, you know, on 6 days, what did I do? How did I live? 6 days. I was eating on cream crackers, biscuits, and Ovaltine. Because I was taught at that time, I understood that being a Muslim, you cannot even eat or drink. But there were lots of Chinese who were returning to China those days with their bicycles, the communist China, going back to communist China. They cook themselves, they eat pork, and then anything to do with them, I did not come near or want to touch at all. So luckily I brought this cream crackers and Ovaltine. I lived on that. And when I reached Hong Kong with a group of young boys and girls from different parts of Asia, including as far as Mexico, that's not quite Asia, so how they got there, Japan, young boys and girls, for 2 weeks, no, 3 months, we stayed on this island just to build this simple playground for handicapped children. What effect did it have on me? Tremendous effect. While in Singapore with World Assembly of Youth, just getting to know, looking at them as literally a spectator, an observer, there I was a participant as part of this group which had to get together in order to build a simple thing, but nevertheless with definite timetable, with discipline, taking turns to cook. And I want to tell you that the one who organized it was an Englishman who was a teacher, who was a Quaker. I don't know whether you know about Quakers. And the Quakers were interesting. Please, my Muslim brothers and sisters, don't get upset that I'm the Quaker. No, I just want to mention that because that teacher and that teaching of Friends Society, they call themselves Quakers, every morning before you start your work, you are involved in meditation. You meditate, and then whoever chose to do it, you could recite your own holy book, and then say something positive to add the spirit of camaraderie there. And you know, meditation is not the monopoly of the Quakers. In Islam, tafakkur, every subuh prayer, I do that, believe it or not. I'm always happy. Tafakkur, thinking about what you have done, what you are, what you plan to do, how you have sinned. Tafakkur is meditation. And other teachings as well. Concentrate or teach or ask people to practice meditation. That's the time when you really look into your inner self. And from then, my second year at university, because my activity as a student leader, I was sent to Ceylon, Sri Lanka, to participate in a seminar. And by that time, I became the director of the seminar, like Fadil is not the director. Not quite, mine was more important. And that was an interesting experience too. Went on after that, because of my good performance, and my final year, that year, I went to Europe for 3 months. They call it Asian Tour of Europe. Again consisting of, they call it Asian Student Leaders Tour of Europe. I was one of them. And from then, I got elected to some conference in Nigeria, served in Holland for a number of years, where I traveled all over the world. Those were the days when there was turmoil between the East and West, the communist, anti-communist and non-communist world, the non-aligned movement. I was this young boy who was really caught in it, but to travel around and to experience this turmoil among student population, with the Japanese radical movement, the Italian fascist movement, all of them, you name it, I went through it, I got to know it, I got involved in the demonstrations. I did not really demonstrate, but I got carried away into that stream. After having been there for so long, I had to go back to serve the government, because the government gave me scholarship. I disappeared after that. It took 2 years to retrace me. They managed to trace me. They said, you owe us something, come back and work. And that was very interesting. Another reward given to me by that call. Because I served for 4 years in the government. What did I do? As a minor officer, but nevertheless one of the few graduates those days, there were very few graduates those days, assigned as secretary of a rural development committee of the district. Which meant actually, I had literally to arrange digging wells for clean water for the villagers. Building small rural roads. Setting up health centers. Putting up little mosques. Community centers. And making sure the schools are being built. Very exciting, very practical, very much in situ, on-site. Practical experience. Those were the days when our then famous, what we call father of development, was Raza. Raza is a father, current Prime Minister of Malaysia. He was the father. He made this a special exercise of ensuring that rural development and education had the highest priority of the government as a newly independent country. Why? Because as a colony, the concentration of development was, of course, in the urban areas. The British were there. In the rural areas, we left to ourselves. We were living subsistence economy. Morning, afternoon, night, we're all, just for our daily needs. And the rural population, which happens to be Muslim in Malaysia, at that time were regarded as backward, not capable of modernization, not clever, indeed stupid, submissive. And I maintain, of course, it's not because they were Muslims or they were Malays, but because they were rural people. In recognition of that, the government led by Razak instituted this rural development, which meant they were able to, the leadership was able to recognize this was a priority. So, I was one of those at the lowest level who was asked to implement this. Very small officer among the many thousands of them who made it a very successful exercise to give infrastructure, to modernize the economy, and coupled with that to ensure that the children went to school. Very important factor. In Malaysia now, if you went to look around at the situation of women, girls, ladies, the majority of student population in Malaysia are girls. Now getting to be more and more of people who work in government and the private sector are also girls. One of them is here, I think. And those who are holding professional posts are getting to be more and more girls. And it is also likely that if you are driving along the road, you see a girl at the bottom of a pole and a man at the top, most likely, indeed, sure, the boss is down. And that man is not the boss, but the one working under the government. It is that far. Why? Because I was given special exercise to go to the villages and persuade all these village folks, please send your children to school. Why? Especially for girls, when they reached the age of puberty, they were married off. Why? Because the parents were interested in becoming grandfather. In Malaysia, you call them datuk. Those who Malaysians would laugh at it. The datuk is a title given by the sultan. And the joke, I'm sorry, my fellow Malaysian friends, I'm very cynical about it. Often more than not, they don't deserve that title, but they call it somehow or other. So I told the common village folk, don't worry about these medals by the sultan. They are interested in becoming datuk, they married off their children so that they become the grandfather equivalent to datuk. They married them off, no thought about giving the girls any advancement at all. It's not in culture, in our culture, it's not in the mentality, it's not in any way, it did not cross our mind at all. The boys were just farming, or at best he would be considered successful if he could go to the nearest town, become a government servant of the lower rank, serving the British those days. But we changed that mindset, and as a result, now, in terms of overall education across the board, we can consider ourselves, and I should know it, because I've been around, can consider ourselves to be very successful in the field of education. That was such a pleasure to me, to serve and to gain experience really from the ground. Now that was the time when politics became very free in Malaysia. I was a very junior man who joined politics later. I started in politics because I was recruited by a minister to be political secretary, which was the lowest position. In that job, I was all over the place as a very junior politician. And thanks to my experience in the villages, I was able to move around a lot. And I was going up and up a little bit, not as fast, but fast enough. And, when holding that post, the Prime Minister at that time, the first Prime Minister, very well-known personality called Abdul Rahman, OIC President, the first one, OIC Chairman, I think, Secretary General rather. Lovely man, a very old man in that sense, very traditional, very feudal. He was known as father of independence. You know, me, the young upstart, that it was disastrous. And there was a lot of problems in the country as a newly independent country, in terms of management, in terms of politics, everything else. And the end result of it in 1969, we had this which we call tragedy, racial tragedy between the Malays and the Chinese, basically, which was something the most serious that the country ever had. And I had the audacity to blame the old man. I accused him of running what we call an intuitive government. I said what we needed was scientific government. Then he told me off. You think you're clever? You get out. So out I was. Thanks to that, I got my master's degree overseas. After that, when I came back, I was given some minor posts. I became an academic. Then Razak came to power. I was given my first post in government as Deputy Minister, Junior Minister of Trade and Industry. Very exciting time. Those were the days when we recognized the need for foreign direct investment. I was very youngish and young actually, if you compare to what I am now. Very youngish, and I used to lead delegations to Japan, to the United States, to Europe, Norway, Sweden, Holland, Germany, to get them to invest in Malaysia. Thank God, I claim that it was very successful. That's one. But now comes the first thing I want to say about what I wanted to say earlier. From then onwards, there's something new which had given me a new experience. The new experience was how to solve problems, how to manage your own portfolio, your own duties, how to manage it, and how to face and if possible handle crisis. That was the first position that I had when I became Deputy Minister of Trade and Industry in Malaysia had a big crisis. I was there. Crisis, we call it the sugar crisis. Sugar disappeared. It was hoarded rather, by traders, and the price of sugar went up through the sky, but again, it disappeared. That's one. Never mind. From then, I went to another position. I was promoted Minister of Primary Industries. What did I have to do? Looking after natural resources. Rubber. We were the world's producer, #1 producer of rubber, palm oil, tin, other things, timber, and pepper. This cocoa, we were all very much needed. But rubber gave me my second crisis experience. I'll elaborate very quickly on this. I come back to that later. Rubber became the crisis that I had to handle. Then after that, I became Minister of Education. My goodness, education was the big thing in Malaysia. Again, I told you how, as a result of persuading the population to have education, by the time I became minister, everybody wanted education. So there was not enough room, there was not enough school, not enough opportunities, so they were crying. If you did not make it in education, you are finished in your political life. Every Prime Minister in Malaysia had to go through that portfolio called education. I want to tell you, out of 10, I think 50% fell on the wayside. I reached nearly that position, but I still fell not because of education, that's because of something else. I'll tell you about the crisis later. But at that time, I'm holding that position, dealing with rubber. The price of rubber went down. There were demonstrations and riots in the rural areas which never could have happened. Because those were the days when there was communist threat, real threat of the communists at the time. They were instigating it. That's a story which I'll come back very quickly. After that, you're very kind. You're very kind. You're giving me more than I thought. Okay. After that, I became Minister of Home Education. No, I'm sorry, no, I'm completely confused. No, as holding ministerial post. And then the point about it is simply this, just to cut the story short, and that is a very important thing in leadership is management of problems as well as management of crisis. The real test of leadership is in time of crisis, not in time when everything is okay. That is the real thing. That is the real test for you, if you want to. Lots of people get posts handed over to them on a silver platter in one way or another, but they would fail when they face crisis and they do not know how to handle it. What are the ingredients that are necessary for you to recognize? Number one, when you have a crisis in hand, number one, you must recognize that it exists. Number two, you must understand why, how, when it happens. Number three, you must look at options. What are the options in order to solve the issues and the crisis itself? Number four, when you have the options, you list them. And the fourth point is that you choose your option. Number five, select the option and stick onto it and show firmness. Now, these are the ingredients. Now, anytime you show weakness, the crisis would deepen and become out of control. That's point number one. Point number two is that if you look at the crisis that we face in the world, not necessarily political, in anything that you do, you must always bear in mind that it is the human factor that must always be taken into account. It is the human factor that has got all the weaknesses in terms of sentiment, emotion, that leads to irrationality, that leads to reasoning or unreasoning, that leads to all the things that affect your decision and your deed. And if you can handle the human factor, I think half your problem is solved. Now, again, if you look at crisis that you face, I went through, I have a very, what I call, positive attitude towards that. I listed those things, the rules, I follow the rules. When everything is said and done, if you still make a mistake, you mishandle it, you must have the humility to be able to accept it. But before you handle the crisis, the most important thing is to be consultative. More often than not, if you're a leader, you regard yourself as the best. I'm a leader. I'm chosen, I must be the best. That's why I'm there. When you are chosen, you will fail in your leadership if you are not consultative. I know best. Leaders mostly never like to be consultative because there's a lot of times being told that they are wrong. They don't like to be told that they are wrong. The how dare you sort of attitude is what leaders adopt when those who are led tell them that they are wrong. How dare you? That attitude, if you have, you are in trouble. And the humility that you have, if you take that all this into account, you must always remember last, because I'm cut short now. There's no excuse for me that I could not finish what I wanted to say. Is only this, and that is when you face a crisis, however bad, I always tell myself, however bad your life is, however bad an issue you face, however bad an experience you go through, there is one thing that my religious teacher taught me. Regard everything as nothing but hikmah that God gives to you, so that you can improve yourself as you go on. And remember, always learn. Never stop learning. Every second of your life is a learning process. Me, at my very old age, I am now learning, facing you all. And thank you for teaching me after this. Thank you.
Now we'll give an opportunity for the floor to ask Tun a couple of questions, maybe 4, 5, 10 minutes, before we go on to the most important session of the event, which is the dialogue. So we'd like to open the session for questions. Can we have one more mic, please?
Assalamualaikum, I'm Muhammad Shakir from Singapore. And my question is, I'd like to ask this question to leaders who are veteran in their sectors. You're always faced with times where you are challenged, your values are challenged. So what are some of the values that you really hold on tightly to when you make decisions, when you work?
Values must be accepted to be something which is universal, right? Number one. Number two, when you have a sense of values as you are being taught, being grown, being trained rather, whether in religious terms or in terms of your study, your study what is good and bad, you have to be guided by that. When you talk about what's the word? You said vision, your what's that? The value, what my what? Value is yeah. I am reluctant to say this, but I want to tell you, a lot of the problems that you have in politics, in government, in international relations, in business, in corporate business, big as well as small, is the lack of values, meaning that there is so much of the human trying to phrase it in such a way that you will not be cynical enough to say, yeah, you're talking nonsense about it. The ego, the greed, the corruption, the abuse and misuse of power. If you have these ingredients, which I'm sorry to say, I get the impression 99% of those holding positions suffer from different degrees. If you have those things, your sense of value is completely kaput. You have nothing really to contribute. The problem with the world, everything, it all boils down to those non-corruptibility, responsibility, and towards society, fairness, human rights. You talk about all this. These are not meant to be declarations. These are meant to be practiced. And I want to tell you again and again, from my past experience, long experience, I cannot find a person of that purity to say there is somebody. At best, I may be able to say I am the one. Nobody will believe it. But I do believe one thing: whatever you say, God, there's such a thing. God knows you're the only one. And in politics, let's talk about politics very briefly. Politics, for example, lots of attention is paid to corruption. We'll abolish corruption. We'll abolish corruption. Abolish corruption. Abolish corruption. Why? Because the guys who make all these declarations themselves are involved. You know, your conscience tells you. I just received something. And I'm not joking. It's not me, but from my experience. No, believe you me, I say not me, because I'm very proud of this. I'm very passionate about this. If it means anything in Malaysia, somebody said I took $1 million ringgit from somebody. I sued him. As a result of that, he lost, and I got 1 million ringgit given that to number one. But about a year later, another publication repeated the accusation. I sued them. It was settled for 1 million. He accused me of receiving 1 million. I got 2 million. This is a real case story. You know, in Malaysia, I'm sorry, Malaysians, in Malaysia, what do? You're a practicing politician. The businessman comes to you and bring a bag full of money. This is what happened to me. Put down, this is for your election. What's this? My contribution. What's in that? Money? Money? So much? Yes? Yeah, it's okay. And more often than not, they take it, thank you very much, get it to the car, goes home, and put it in his cupboard. And Malaysians, I want to tell you, there was one case, one chief minister who received the money, kept in the cupboard. There's so much money, he did not know what to do with it. He decided to take it to Australia. And he was caught by the customs for carrying so much money. Just to tell you, the sort of money, I can assure you, Malaysia is one of them, but not a major. I tell you, I don't want to tease. There are a few of you who want to be in politics. I can assure you, when you're there, there will be immediately somebody say, I'd like to help you. Oh, it's okay, it's okay. It's all right, it's all right. Still, and the back, put it there. Then after that, he leaves. Oh, okay. It's not a joke. It's very serious. Once you start accepting the first, then you are done. Once you don't, your prestige goes up. Once you, and I want to show you, it's the most difficult thing when you talk about values. And the ability to admit, I quarreled with my boss before on issues like doing something which is what I consider right. The government had done something which is considered wrong. The population said it's wrong, the village, the area said something big. And my boss was aware I was the acting prime minister. And I overturned the decision. He said, why? I said, it's wrong. And he said, it's a sign of weakness to admit mistake. I said, no, sir, on the contrary, it's a sign of courage to admit mistake. Then again you talk about values. One last point. You guys are clapping. You guys are agreeing with me. In Malaysia, that's exactly what happened when I faced students. You abuse power, everything. I said, young man, at that time, they were addressing me. When you graduate, you hold a position of high position of power, you come back to me and look at me in the eyes. You will say, I'm still clean. Then we will say, very few of them did that. One particular critic, fierce critic of the government in Malaysia, I told him, he was the one who asked me questions. He became a minister. I won't be too personal. Became minister, he came to my house talking. I said, I hear you beginning to use money. He said, look at me in the eyes. He sort of a little bit. That's my explanation about values. Kaput, on to the drink. Challenges on you, whether you please remember tonight when you are in power, okay? Remember, I might not be in this world, but that old man was right. I'm so shy.
Good evening, sir. Thank you for the talk. I actually have two questions. The first question that I'd like to ask is, what advice would you give to someone who is presented with an opportunity to lead in a high position with no previous leadership experience? And the second question is, how did you overcome the challenge of people refusing your resources because of their religious or cultural views? Okay. The first question is, what advice would you give to someone who is presented with an opportunity to lead in a high position with no previous leadership experience? And the second question is, how did you overcome the challenge of people refusing your resources because of religious or cultural views?
Well, first question, if you have no experience, you're offered. I think the only reason why he or she gets it is because of contact by appointment rather than by election. In other words, by popular opinion, it is not likely. There will be people who are not enough, but who have nothing. If you have nothing yet you are there, it must be something wrong with the system. Likely a crony. In government, in the government, not in government, let me also touch on business. Somebody who's a friend who gets a position on that because of that. No experience at all. They just don't deserve. What happens is, if he takes, or if she or she takes on the responsibility, then responsibility would not be fulfilled. There's no effectiveness. they will not be able to perform. It's like that. And it should not happen. That's it. Now the second thing is about refusing resources. Yeah. Well, what happens then? Now, this is a very sensitive thing, because religion is something which is universal yet personal. It's between you and God. Your ability to choose depending on two things. One is likes and dislikes. Two is your faith. There are certain things in religions which just says no because of certain dogmas or certain things that are the fundamental to that religion. I don't want to be involved too much in this, but if that happens, all you can do is respect it. If there are reasons which you think you could use an argument or as a persuasive matter, have the opportunity to discuss and to understand. I want to tell you a bad experience when I was a young student leader in Holland. My friends, all of them, many of them, are Arabs. I will mention the country, not any one of those who are present here, not the country. You know, they were eating pork just easily in the food, and I was shocked. I said, and there I was, non-Arab speaking Muslim, able to read the Quran and recite the Quran, but not really understanding it. And there was my Arab friend, very good friend, who was Arab. He started telling me what's wrong with it. Honestly, I was just shocked. I had no answer. I said, what's wrong? I just did not believe. There was nothing. I was told it's just wrong. And the rationalization of it was given by my religious teacher. But again, what could I do? You see that, and you start referring, you start asking, you start persuading. That's the only thing you can do. But that is what I mean by it's personal. Universal yet personal. So that's what it has. I thought you switch it off. So I would rather any one of you jump or argue if you want, if you like to. Not necessarily a question, but beyond the question. I'm not the chair.
I'm really sorry. Due to time constraints, we'd like to take the last question from our trainer, but
You decide.
I'm really sorry, but it's running out of time. I'd like to take one more question from our trainer.
Thank you, sir. I'm in awe of your leadership qualities and style, and a person of your caliber is highly respected. Just a quick question about the Bumiputra model, and how effective has it been in leveling the economic playing fields in Malaysia, and what lessons do we have to learn as South Africa from that, because that's a critical issue for us at the moment.
It's a very short question, but requires a very, 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 very long answer. But let me try to summarize it for those who don't know. What she means, the Bumiputras literally translated means sons of the soil, the natives of the country. In Malaysia, immediately after independence, we realized that the Muslim, i.e. the Malays, i.e. the Bumiputras Muslim, were very backward because they were in the rural areas. That's why I emphasize on my visit to the rural areas to persuade the population to send the children to school. Now, in recognition of that, that's why the government at that time, led by Raja, embarked on rural development, which actually meant trying to uplift the well-being livelihood of the Bumiputras, the Malays, the Muslims. That's point number one. Now, that became quite controversial later politically because it became a racial thing. But never mind. The issue is how successful was it, and how could it perhaps be used or be, something that maybe the South African situation might consider to be helpful to adapt it. I consider it to be the most successful. Not being partisan, it might be difficult. We just finished an election incidentally in Malaysia. The most free. I campaigned myself, but my candidate lost. In this sense, in the policy implementation itself, and let's put it this way. The Muslims, Bumiputra, the rural people were considered, I said just now, stupid, not good, backward, not capable of modernization. Translate that into here. Sorry, I'm not interfering or talking too much about this country, but let's say you transfer it here. Sounds familiar, maybe. Right? That's one. We said no. They're not by nature like that. It is because they were neglected. They were led by themselves. The colonial powers, those in power, just left it themselves. They didn't do anything. We said no. Instead of them coming to us, say very popular English say, Muhammad come to the mountain, go to Muhammad, that's all. We brought education to them. We built hostels, we built schools, we give scholarships in a preferential manner. When it was first started in Malaysia, you could not find any Malay who would hold any position whatsoever that could be considered to be commercial or economic in nature, i.e., not a sales girl, not somebody who peddling some rotten fruit, not selling ice cream, not to be owning some company, nothing whatsoever. A Malay was just a Malay, like that. No, that was the situation. But because of the concentration on infrastructure development in the rural areas, it affected them directly, which indirectly also modernized their economic activity in the rural areas, become much more modern market economy, slowly and surely. It took decades for us to do that. Coupled with that was the concentration on education, bringing them, dragging them. In other words, they were strictly speaking not qualified to enter university unless you are grade 1, grade 2. Grade 3, not possible. Yet grade 3 are what the Muslims are suffering from. We say, okay, not their fault because they are in the religion. We take the grade 3, flood the schools and the universities and send them still. Preparatory classes were given to them. Pre-university classes. And then we also send them overseas. The British Commonwealth countries would not accept them because they were underqualified. So what did we do? Thanks to the United States. We sent them to the United States, the state universities, because they were not particular about too high a qualification, number one. Number two, they're cheaper. Number three, they are much more open. And we send them, and amazing, they came back with degrees. They came back with qualification. And the best of those, we send them to the best universities in the US and all over the world. End result of it all, just what I told our friends just now. In the old days, if you are Ahmad, it's a Malay, Muslim, yet you are Dr. Ahmad, our eyes would pop up. You're a doctor? So again, transfer that to here. Almost. But it's a massive exercise. You have to involve yourself here as to compare what we did. Sorry, but the most important thing was that there was political will, political awareness, there was national consensus, irrespective of other racial groups and religions, through election process. That's the answer.
Thank you very much, Sid. Thank you all for your questions. Thank you for the answers. Thank you for the beautiful, insightful talk at the beginning. Now we have come to a very important session of the program, which is the dialogue session, whereby you would engage in the dialogue. I would like to call the manager of Young Leaders Network, Asad Jaffrey, to help me, assist me co-moderate this session.
So as some of you know, we've been having this Young Fellows program, which is a leadership development program. We have 18 different countries represented, 28 people, and of course all of you here who live in Durban. And we've been talking about leadership, and of course Tun talked about his own experience. And we wanted to open up the dialogue with what role the young generation plays in future leadership, and also what challenges and opportunities are there. So I know there's some of you who've been talking about this over the last 2 days, as well as some of our guests. So we're just going to open it up to the floor and start that dialogue, and anyone can chime in at any time. We have mics, please use them, and we'll come around and help moderate the discussion. Sound okay? Okay, so anyone who wants to start in that, go ahead. Shiza, did you want to say something? No? All right, so we have Abid here who's going to start us off. It's on.
Yes, okay. Hi guys. Hi everyone. Assalamu alaikum. This is Abid. I come from Pakistan. I'm an MBA and I'm working in the corporate sector. Okay, as the topic goes, the young leadership, the role youth can play in transforming leadership and stuff. I'm particularly very optimistic about the role of youth in this era, and I think that with the advent of the new social media tools and the power, we can combine our power, and youth and the young people they've got more channels to combine their voices and make their voices heard. Facebook, Twitter, I mean, maybe like 3-4 years ago, they would have been a medium to either socialize networking, but now they're working as big tools. Point is that they're still smaller as compared to the mass media, the traditional media that we've got, but the youth still, I think, I believe can play a big role in putting up causes, revolutions, etc. Maybe I think I've heard it as a different revolution. The Facebook and Twitter, they played a big role in facilitating them. So that's my point.
Anyone else? Okay, in the back, Asma. And whoever you are, please introduce yourself first and where you're from, just so we kind of get to know each other as well.
I'm going to stand in the back here. My name is Asma Malik and I'm from Toronto, Canada, and I definitely appreciated the remarks because I felt like a lot of similar experiences in terms of my activism and the work that I do. I was involved in the student union, and through that I got involved in politics, and that's been my work for the last little while in Canada at the provincial and federal level. And I guess I just wanted to make a comment about the question regarding leadership and having zero leadership experience and being given a particular role. And while I agree with you that having no experience and being given an important role is very suspicious, I think that in my experience and kind of what I've taken as I've kind of grown and been given the opportunity to be in more leadership roles is to also recognize the potential in young people. Sometimes there's not the practical experience that we value in professional environments, but there are so many different pieces in terms of people's personality, in terms of their community work, in terms of their academic kind of wherewithal that I think makes it even more incumbent on people who do have the opportunity to recognize that and allow people to be in roles where they might have to learn, where there is a little bit of jump or a leap, but that we can kind of grow young people and grow future leaders through that way. So, thank you again.
Thank you very much. Just a reminder before we continue, this is a dialogue session, it's not a Q&A, and so it's for us to discuss and talk about issues possible and possible solutions to it as a community.
Hello, I'm Shazatari from Pakistan, and I work for Center for Civic Education in Pakistan, and I create awareness amongst youth regarding fundamental rights and democracy in Pakistan. And I've conducted several trainings for youth to promote and create awareness regarding their fundamental rights and how to be an active citizens that play a vital role in changing the society. So I believe that creating awareness among youth is the most important thing we all forget. We need to educate, as the former Prime Minister also said so, that we need to go to the villages and the remote areas and to create awareness. Awareness is the key to success. If people are not aware, then we cannot expect them to grow and to succeed in their careers or in their lives. So I believe creating awareness is the key to success.
Thank you very much. We'll have one from there and then we'll come back here.
Thank you, Chairperson. I'm Tulan Tongabe from UKZN Resident Campus. What I would like to say on the first issue of the role of the youth in terms of leadership. The first thing, our youth, we need to be aware of the fact that, especially here in South Africa, we need to be able to influence the system that we need. Currently, our role models in terms of leadership, they are not doing very well. So the role that we need to play is to change the image of leadership, change the image of political activists, and change the system as a whole, of which it will not take one day. It might take some years, but we will get there. And then in terms of challenges, the first challenge that we have here in South Africa particularly is illiteracy. Our youth don't like to engage themselves in education and improving their education. When someone has a degree, he thinks he has it all. Yet you still need to go to honors and masters and PhDs and everything. That's the first challenge we have. The second one, it's the power monopolizing. Everybody, when he has it, he wants that thing to be for himself and for his family. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much.
Some of the ideas that we want, there are great comments coming up, and we're trying to come up with solutions, creative solutions as a community of people, even though we're a global community. So we want to hear some of the challenges, but we want to hear some of the opportunities and some of the solutions that might be right here in the room.
Yeah, Sanbona, hello everyone. My name is Menzi. I'm from spoken to a couple of people here already, and I appreciate being here. I think it's an opportunity in itself to be around such illustrious beings, people who are eager to lead and eager to learn. So I'm from an organization which is an arts-based organization, poetry, we're using poetry to do many different types of things. But when my brother here spoke about the social media, and then Dongabe there spoke about the issue of illiteracy and speaking to power and all that, I'm trying to put all my thoughts together into this one thing. There is the issue of the fact that we have availability of social media. Someone was asking me about South Africa, how far have we come since '94? You know, someone downstairs here, how much have we come on a racially and blah 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 and politically. So it was a very difficult question to answer, because I told him that on the surface we've come quite far. There's democracy. I can swim in any beach I want. I can marry who I want. I can practice. I can do whatever I want. I can be who I want. Especially people that are born in the 90s, what we call the born frees. They are able to do a couple of things, and they are mostly on social media. But most people who are, I don't know, I might be wrong, but a lot of people who are over 50, for example, or over 45 or something, they may be able to, they are on Facebook, but they're not checking out what's happening in Pakistan. They're not checking out what's happening in Palestine. They don't know whether Malaysia is east or west. And some of them don't really care. So they just chat, find dates, whatever. The older and the young ones. So the challenge, I'm presenting a challenge and an opportunity, and maybe a little bit of what I think is a way forward. South Africa just had something called BRICS, right? This whole BRICS thing. Everybody knows what it is. There's, you know, the world is sort of looking north for economic solutions and partnerships and trade and all that. We're looking east and, you know, and east and south, right? But that presents an opportunity in itself. So it's a question to everybody. Firstly, with what I've mentioned, with the issue of illiteracy, with the issue of there's a born-free generation, which is a bit detached from the other generation because of Facebook and other things, positive and negative parts of Facebook and other social media. With all this considered, where do we think as youth, I'm a bit of a youth myself, where do we think as youth we fit into the whole BRICS framework? Do we fit, and are we using social media enough? Next question. Are we using social media well enough to link up as youth across religions and across ethnicities or whatever is other things that we have. And are we using it enough? And are we ever gonna get together and form something which is very strong, which the world can listen to, but it's not just framed from the top, like economic summit from the top. Do youth have the power to actually do it for themselves? Because my brother there was talking about a revolution, and I'm for the revolution, a positive revolution.
Great stuff. You know, just a remark on that. I'm from Egypt myself, and we had a revolution a couple of years back, and we call that revolution the Facebook revolution, because the youth communicated through Facebook. So I always say that if we were able to topple a government that's been there for 6 years, more than 6 years, through Facebook, we, the youth, can certainly have an intellectual revolution through Facebook too. So that's it. Okay, we'll go for the sister first.
I'm Shanam Khan and I'm from Durban. I used to teach in social media at university here. And so I think it's an interesting topic that you brought up, social media. I used to teach the first years about, we even discussed with the Arab Revolution and I've got the views of young people, and I just wanted to perhaps make a comment, and then you guys can elaborate if you want, that sometimes I think there's an over-reliance on social media, and it gives the illusion to young people that you are doing a lot of great things, because I don't know if you've heard of clicktivism, where people just click and they think they're doing something great, and it's something that a lot of young people are doing today, where you think you're saving the polar bears in Antarctica, and you think you're doing a lot, and it actually, in a way, is a negative thing, because it makes you feel, young people especially, that you are being activists when you're not really doing anything. So I think sometimes it snowballs into the idea that social revolution and Twitter and Facebook and we're saving the world, but sometimes it can just be sort of a facade that we don't even realize ourselves, and I thought maybe that could just open up the conversation there as well.
You're not in touch with people, you're not socializing.
Alright, we're going to go Hamam, and then we'll come back to the more folks, okay?
Thank you. My name is Hamam, and I'm from Palestine. I totally agree with what you said, and before we lead, one must basically first define himself within the right constraints so that he may lead in the right direction. We can't just lead if we're in the wrong state of mind, or else we will, be leading a whole bunch of people to a wrong cause. You first have to, before everything, you first have to define yourself, define yourself to the soul that you are, and you'll see that you're equal to everyone. And then once you've done that, you can understand people, you're able to influence, and that's the power of a good soul, a good, clean soul. Thank you.
We'll take the sister back there, the Indor. Shakir, you want to say something? Go ahead.
The sister back there first?
Yeah, go back there, and then
The sister's name is Tun Singh. I'm from Joburg, but I'm residing in Durban currently. What I've seen as a big challenge for us as the youth in South Africa especially is the lack of, I'd like to steal the awareness one. I don't know if I should say it's a lack of awareness or a general ignorance as to one's self-value, that you don't really believe in how valuable you are. And that's why we find the youth that we actually use our power to do nothing. So we'd rather invest our power and our energy in activities that do not benefit us and they do not benefit the societies that we are in. And if maybe something can be done in raising or increasing the self-value that one has, and we'll even find the youth in rural areas. Once I don't know how to put this, but once we have activities or programs that are looked at encouraging people and building the resources that people currently have, because there's a misconception that one can only add value, or one can only be powerful, or one can only add value to something or be resourceful if they are intellectually intelligent. But then what happens to people who are intelligent in the sense of arts? What happens to those who are intelligent in the sense of handicrafts and handiworks? We have the rural youth especially. Those are people who know how to use their hands to do amazing things. But no one takes the time to encourage them and to remind them how valuable that skill is, that skill of using your hands. There are people who are very, very skillful in just talking. And that person needs to be reminded that your talking is incredibly valuable. So if you can actually come back home, come back to the soil and say, people who have an attachment to nature, people who know how to use nature, our Khoisan in South Africa, the hunter-gatherers, those people, those youths, if they can be taken and say, we still need this, we still need people who are good with their hands, we need people who have a mother in nature. If we can bring that back home and I think kind of concentrate less on the intellectual development and acknowledge the fact that we need all kinds of skills, natural development and those involving hands and those involving intellect. And I think that maybe we can get better ideas as to how to better our youth and how to move forward and create one big revolution that literally involves everyone from different spheres of life.
Okay. One positive challenge that we see now is that technology and social media is a positive challenge for the leaders of the future, because through social media, information is spread instantaneously. If you see your president doing something wrong, you put it on Twitter, everybody knows. So this is a positive challenge because it forces all leaders to be authentic. And I think that is the new value that the leader should have in the future, to have authenticity in whatever he do and how he acts and how he believes. Yeah, thank you.
Very quickly to recap in one of the points that you mentioned earlier, I don't know if you guys would think about it or agree with me about that, but I believe as a as a youth, right? There's always a challenges when it comes to bringing up your ideas and trying to convince older people about what you're trying to change. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges, actually, to change that tradition. Trying to convince people that your point of view or your perception actually can change for the best rather than actually going backward. Coming from the same nation as Anas, the youth is they're very powerful in sense they have a lot of dreams that they would like to change in Egypt, but unfortunately our government, it's very rare when they believe in our power. So I think that's like one of the biggest challenge that I would really like to see my own nation change, that they consider our power, they consider our ideas and innovation. And I believe that's one of the reasons that Malaysia has gotten to where it reached right now, because you guys are starting to listen to your youth, you're trying to empower their ideas and their thoughts into actions. So I just wish that a lot of Arab nations would follow that. And that's one of the reasons I love Malaysia. Yeah, so that's it.
My name is Mohammed. I'm feeling a lot of place here, over 50. But I came in as an observer just to see, because I'm still very much a youthful person. Still involved with youth. Just came from a weekend program with young people. Have one this coming weekend in Joburg. A couple of weeks' time, I think we have a big camp. But I want to share with you some of my own experiences very quickly, is that if I can leave you with a message, every one of you, as young people, especially South Africans, and I mean of course everybody else, but South Africans in particular, we are finding less and less young people involved in community, in civic society, in civic organizations. I'd like to make a plea to every one of you. Attach yourself with one project somewhere. You talked about building play areas for children. We did that. We've taken a whole entire group, some of you attended it from here as well. Just go and do something for the less privileged. And that will lead you into become a leader. Because the experience you get by working with other people in a project of that nature, believe me, you will go a long way. When I started off as a youth in high school or just first university, I had absolutely no exposure, no experience. But just kind of just hang on there and went through the motions. And I reached all positions. Okay, I could become deputy minister of any country, but I became president of organizations, chairperson, you name it, and I've done it. And I'm still doing it. So if I can leave you with this message, especially for South Africans, if you ask the ANC and ask all the political organizations, there are no young people entering the system to do things for society. And I think by attaching yourself to some kind of project, meaningful project, will contribute to your own development as a young leader. And I think I agree with you that with the social networking, too much of emphasis on the social networking, just clicking things and think you're doing something. By the way, I said this morning, looking at my LinkedIn, which I haven't done for a long time, and I said, click, 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 see who's in my circle. Thank you.
So my name is Ignor. I'm from Singapore, very small country, and you shared that, I mean, we abandoned Bumiputra to adopt meritocracy, a merit-based system. I think both has its advantages and disadvantages. So I'm a village, I do village development in Singapore, which is very weird. A small community where, I mean, Singapore, a lot of people know us as a very sort of a modern city. And that actually leads us to realize that there's a lot of things that we are missing. When you ask a Singaporean what you define as success, people say the 5 C's. To have a car, a cash, career, a condominium, and clubs. And credit card as well, yeah, so 6 C's. And what happens throughout our development, villages gets destroyed. And when we talk about development, what's the real meaning of progress, we realize that a lot of Singaporeans know the price of everything, but we know the value of nothing. We sort of lost the value of hard work, appreciating the value of the effort that our parents put in, our grandparents put in, and great-grandparents put in. And what we did as a community back in 2009 was to realize that we need to have villages back. So what we did was we raised funds, from the community, we get bricks, we collect discarded materials, and we build a village in the middle of this whole modern city. And people are thinking that we are crazy, why build a village when the impetus for progress is to have more high-rise buildings. And ever since then, the community grew bit by bit, and alhamdulillah, now we have at least 1,000 people, volunteers, as well as full-time members. We have social entrepreneurs over there, and I thought I want to share a bit about one thing which you raised, which resonated very much with me about the people with the hands, the skills of the hands, and people who are connected to nature. And what I realized throughout my experience in the village was that if there's one reason why we are facing so much problem in this world, it's because of 3 things. We lost connection with ourselves and humanity, we lost connection with nature, and we lost connection with God. And what I thought was, in your relation about Facebook, I have a very weird relationship with Facebook since very young. I used to be a Facebook activist, always on Facebook posting things, and then I discovered this community. And that's when I realized that I have so many friends, 2,000 friends, or 1,000 to 2,000 friends, but how many friends on those lists that I really connected with. And that's when I know this community, I go down on the ground, and from Facebook I end up doing face-to-face. And I thought that was the best connection that you can ever have, is to have face-to-face connection. And then what happened after that is when you have face-to-face connections, the community spirit grows. And this is when my next phase in my relationship with Facebook changes. I start connecting with visitors, foreigners who come to the village, and I get connected on Facebook. And sometimes it feels very painful when I see my friends in Syria, Palestine, even in certain parts of Southern America where they're not having good lives. And what I do on Facebook just to raise awareness, I think it's important. I will just post a photo from either Palestine or Syria, and I get very interesting views from my friends who are non-Muslims. You know, like they share, you know, like maybe you guys should try this. Maybe you guys should try maybe do some wastewater treatment in this part of Palestine. And I got involved in my first project with India. It was started off with Facebook. I know of several villages where they actually waste more than 50% of their fruits because the fruits gets destroyed. So me get connected with few engineers in Singapore, and we found some engineers in India, non-Muslims, I mean, doesn't matter. And we worked on a project called a solar pond dryer, where we help to dry fruits so that the farmers can get an income. And Alhamdulillah, the project has progressed, and what we do now is we set up a lab for the community to use. And for me, when I talk to my people in Singapore in my lab, I say that if there's one way I want to change, is I want people, if there's one thing I want them to make, is to make a change to themselves, to make one difference to another. And that's what I hope that from that small lab, maybe there could be more village labs around the world, and maybe inshallah the world could be better.
Can I just ask, because we're running out of time, there is another networking session that's really important for just the last 2 comments, and there's a sister here and this brother here.
Okay, I had an original point, but after listening to this brother, I feel like I'm inclined to say that in this discussion, when everybody has their views, I look around me and I see the enthusiasm and the passion, and most importantly, I see the unity. I'm sure each and every one sitting here shares the same views for the future, the same views about humanity, and I feel like that's such an important thing about our generation, which maybe I'm making a general statement here, but what the previous generation lacked was humanity, and that's what we have. We have this deep sense of humanity where we love and we care for each other. We want to change the world for the better. However, my original point is that I feel like, going back to what Shabnam said, the desktop activism, our generation, we go that far and then we don't act. We talk, we think, we have these great ideas. I mean, we all have these great ideas, but we don't act on them. I'm really interested in politics, and if you look at modern day politics, there's no young people. We've had the same politicians for the past few decades. Why aren't young people acting? Why aren't they getting out there, making politicians notice them? I know the sister here said that they will give us the opportunity, but they haven't given us the opportunity, so we need to take it into our own hands and start acting and making them notice that we're here, we have a new vision, a new way of doing things, and we want to act. So that's my submission to them.
We'll take a comment from the brothers.
I think I'm actually quite happy that I'm speaking after the sister. Because I basically want to take up from exactly where you left. Sorry, I'm Abdul Rahim Mirza from Durban as well. I'm sort of in a midlife crisis right now, where I'm half as I'm sort of a student, not really a student, but I'm also very much I'm very much involved with the older generation and their organizations as well. What I notice is that the older organizations are crying out, they're literally crying out for succession. Every single organization that I'm in, and Uncle Muhammad will bail me out on this, we're looking for young blood, and we just can't find that. And then on the other hand, on the other side of the bridge, there's a whole load of people, there's this wave of energy on the other side of the bridge that is just wanting to move across and wanting to make change, as you said. I think that the fact of the matter is that, yes, we have all that energy, we have that enthusiasm, we just don't have those structures in order to constructively use that energy and that enthusiasm. And I think what we need to somehow do, as Uncle Muhammad said, is, and as you rightly pointed out, is that we need to go out and perhaps give our hand over to the organizations and tell them to groom us, tell them to give us the opportunity. And again, maybe we need to have another what's this called?
ThinkTALK.
With the older generation, and tell them, you know what? There's a wave of people. Go young at heart. Go young at heart. But we need to have another ThinkTALk with the older generation. Tell them, guys, there are youth out there. There's people out there. And I'm sure most of you guys have an MSA and whatnot in other organizations, Golden Key, SRC, and whatever else you're SPOT you're involved with. And there's youth out there that want to take up the challenge. And I think what's lacking. So in summary, what's lacking is that structured approach for us to channel our enthusiasm and thoughts.
Thank you very much. We'll take the last comment or interaction from Tun, our chairman.
I am here as an intruder because I'm not meant to be here. Meant to go home, rest, and sleep. But I requested that I stay and listen to you. And this is the first time I had the privilege of listening to you, interacting with each other. I was turning to Fadil, said, my God, I wish I could really debate with these guys face to face.
Yes.
Let me say a few things. Number one, the revolution in technology, in terms of not just related to the internet, is a relatively recent one. Number one. Number two, there are still parts of the world, and most parts of the world, where people are still deprived of access to it. When you talk about the internet, for example, you talk about handphones, you talk about computers and all that. The accessibility to these are not that widespread. Yet, digital democracy has arrived. It has arrived with a vengeance. In Malaysia, since it was mentioned, I had the right to reply, because my country was mentioned, don't be over-enthusiastic about this. Because the arrival of digital democracy has produced a lot of very strong cultural shock among the leaders and among people, ordinary people, and among the older generation. Why do I say cultural shock? Because people like me, who is reasonably educated in dealing with the computer, except once in a while I ask Khalid to help me. When you go through it, you're amazed at the freedom that has been granted. Now, amazing still when you see the different degrees, different approaches, different use and utilization of it. Now, when you talk and compare notes about the social media, all the excitement has been the result of the more political aspect of life, which you're very excited about. We just see results. But the important thing is how to ensure that this cultural shock that is emanating all over the world could be managed. Nobody, it's easy to express yourself. You're so free. I want to tell you very frankly, I hope no offense meant to you, I hope you're not the guilty one. Some of those things that come out of them are brilliant. Some of those are pure provocative. Some of them are so attractive to everybody under different circumstances that they become sensations overnight. But some of them are nothing but filth. Some are absolute nonsense. Some are just, words cannot describe them. And they are all there. What's the challenge among the young? How do you differentiate? Now comes back to the very interesting point, person to person. Now, the threat of the social media and digital democracy is how to ensure that they are all, or we are all, educated enough to be able to absorb it in our stride. I'm making a general statement, I know, but these are the things that worry me. People like me, if you like to call it older generation, very old, actually, it's true when I go through it. Goodness, there are the filth, I use the word filth. I don't want to go too much detail. There's a lot of lies, there's a lot of truth in it, a lot of this. How do you differentiate? And the tendency in looking through or using is that you know that this so-and-so is a very popular one which conforms to your wish. So you concentrate on that and they tend to become popular. If they are not against you, you don't really look at it. I want to go back to Malaysia, for example. We have our leadership which tries to be in on it. They have tweeting. Again, Malaysians, pardon me, Malaysia is a much more free country. Even if they report, I won't get into trouble because you have a false picture, false imagination, false perception, which is not the real thing. Again, back, these are list of challenges that we face. Be excited about it, don't be overexcited about it because we're still evolving. Bottom line is simple. Back to what I said, my passion, education. Education and the human contact, believe you me. We could easily, let's not have this gathering, let's use the social media. I use, what do you call, Skype. I know how to use Skype, you know. That's the only reason why I don't want to use Skype is that they want you to, oh, he's old man, he's no hair. No, I want to defend this, is a joke. You know, use that, why not? But we say no, get together. Now you are staring at another human being or your fellow human beings, which is very, very, very valuable, especially in the context of all this excitement that you have about social media. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Tun. And thank you all for the insightful discussion. Really hope this spirit continues for future thinkTALKs in South Africa. We have come to the end of the program, but it would not be fair not to thank the person who had made this happen, the young fellows and thinkTALK. This would have not been possible without the help of our chairman of the Young Leaders Network, Mr. Ibrahim Patel. Please give him a round. Thank you very much for everything. On behalf of all the internationals here from over, I think, 15, 16 countries. 18. I'm sorry. From over 18 countries. We thank you very much. And we thank all the South Africans here for the very warm welcome. Thank you all so much. And I'll invite Asad to give the closing remarks.
Just a couple of important points. We came up with this event, thinkTALK, a few months ago and started in Malaysia, as Anna said. And the idea was we wanted a space that was safe for all sorts of different people that were living in Malaysia, in Kuala Lumpur specifically, and a place to build community. So the things that you guys are talking about are really important, and this isn't a stop, it's a start. And it's up to all of you that are here in South Africa, everybody from around the world to keep this connected, keep the conversation going. And the thing that we're going to do next is everyone will go outside after we have a closing prayer and a short performance from Cool Fire. And there'll be some snacks, refreshments, but you guys should all network, talk, discuss ideas, exchange emails, Facebook IDs, Twitter handles, and get to know one another, especially those in South Africa with all of our international guests. So please do that. We are trying to build community. We're trying to come up with creative solutions that are led by young people. And hopefully this is just one of those things that we can do to contribute to that. So thanks again for coming. I'd like to bring up Dr. Malik to close out.
الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم. رضينا بالله ربا وبالإسلام دينا وبسيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم نبيا ورسولا. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. رب اغفر وارحم وأنت خير الراحمين. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا يا مولانا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله. لله رب العالمين.
Prayer. Thank you everyone once again. Thank you everyone once again. We can now proceed to the refreshments with. Oh, is there a poem or just a drum? There's a drum. We'll do it while we're having refreshments. A poem. Okay, we'll have a poem first. Sorry. Go for the poem.
It's a combination of 3 poems that I'm going to give. This one goes: today becomes tomorrow. Every day the chance. Each day is wasted away. This isn't the way that things should stay. Pick a color, paint your path. Right the wrong and make your mark. You dream it, so you want it. So live it, don't defer it. Make it true. Today is today. It's all up to you. From dawn to dusk, from morning to evening, from sunrise to sunset, it is quietly and lonely. With nobody to name, or nobody with the name of mine. With nobody to embrace me, with nobody to fall in love with nobody to stay with nobody to share my feelings with. From supper time till breakfast time, from breakfast time till dinner time. I have no one to teach me how to love. I have no one to kiss me good night. I have no one to tap my shoulder on a table. I have no one to caress me gently on my sleep. I have no one to hold a hand past the valley. My life is so lonely and dark. My life is so dim and glum, but just a dream. With nobody to talk to and make me smile. With nobody to kiss me gently, though deeply. With nobody to lie next to me in a deep winter. And indeed, I am indeed a lonely self, and my dream is but a deferred dream.
Thank you very much. From the dialogue time to the refreshment time, we have everybody to network with. Please proceed with the refreshment, and we would like to ask your favorite to play the drum. Thank you very much. Thank you all once again.